The state appointed a financial guardian, but when the kids asked for an accounting of their money, the state said no. They don't have the mental capacity to even ask for their own records. Then the state tried to get a temporary restraining order to stop Fox 4 from reporting the story, claiming our report would cause irreparable harm to them. The judge ruled against the state.
We have to buy this out of our money.
The state gives each of the kids a measly $60 a month of their own money. They use it to keep a small refrigerator stocked with healthy food. Jean has lost 20 pounds and 2 teeth. There are no personal belongings in their room other than the TV. So where are all of their things? Sitting in their empty house in Richardson.
This is the way we found it 2 weeks ago. Busted wide open.
Bob Graham lived across the street from the kids for 21 years. He's furious about what the state is letting happen to the kids' house. The yard is neglected. The power was shut off this spring, leaving a mess in the kitchen. Spoiled food. He says the state even left the doors unlocked.
What irritates me is the gross negligence in handling their financial affairs. There's got to be a better way of handling this than just coming in a totalitarian fashion and taking over people's lives against their will.
Eileen was one of Jean's closest friends. She says Jean was having some memory problems, but she too questions the state's heavy hand.
They needed some kind of help. They did, but it's very frightening to realize how totally helpless and how without resources they're going to be.
The kids did have representation. The court appointed an attorney, Bert Starr. He wouldn't comment, but records show he billed their account for 10 hours of legal service, although what he did in those 10 hours was cut out of the record. The kids told us they met with him once briefly before their hearing, and he represented them again in court.
They didn't have anybody really to help them.
Nick Sheik is Jean's former boss. He went to court with the kids.
No, there was no defending per se in the court. It was just the procedure went through really quickly. And
so it was a done deal.
Done deal, yes.
I'm sick and tired of the whole thing.
The kids are livid. They say the state has tried to paint them as troublemakers who are not capable of making decisions about their lives. And they're frightened it appears to be working.
Having help is one thing. Having somebody come in and take over the whole ball of wax and say, you will do as I say, and you have no control
over your own life.
Of your own life, and you will do exactly what we say and nothing else.
How could this happen in a country that talks about and brags about freedom, and yet and how well we treat our old people? And this can happen to any of you. You might think about that, all of you. This can happen to you.
All right, we are back on You Judge. This is really a story that's true story that happened to this couple in Texas. And I know that's another trick that's used, is declare somebody incompetent and then take all their property, especially when you have an attorney that can waltz into the judge's office anytime they want. And if the judge is unethical, which we're trying to find some ethical judges in New Mexico, and you could just say, hey judge, we want this court order, take their property, and there's nothing people can do about it. Most of the time, these things happen to people that have nothing. They have no way of defending themselves, and it's just a horror story that happens in our family court system in our state of New Mexico. Any state that is bankrupt, $900 million in the hole, thanks to a whole series of bad investments and cases where you've got
choo-choo trains.
Choo-choo trains, yes, and you have a governor who appoints 500 people, some getting a salary of over $300,000, and they don't have any approval by anyone in the state of no people. Nobody has elected them. And it's just unbelievable. But this is really a sad story that's happened to this couple in Texas. Our next guest is someone who we also feel has had some success in the family court system. And Lance, how do you say your last name?
You've been saying it correctly.
Oh,
Clafetta.
Clafetta. Okay, all right. Lance, you've been on the show before many times, I think, with Leslie, and probably you've talked with Lee. Give us a brief summary of what has happened to you in the family court system. I know we don't have to go into all of the details.
Right, I came on the show in August as I had a permanency hearing coming up, and I wanted to update the viewers. My case actually goes back to 2002, when my children were taken into custody. There were a lot of factors, but primarily my now late ex-wife got into her head, probably from her friends in her 12-step groups, the NA and the Alcoholics Anonymous, that all you have to do to get rid of your husband is make these allegations of abuse and neglect to the CYFD, and then you'll get custody of the children, and he'll have to pay you. So she initiated this plan, and we had the family preservation workers coming around to the house when I was at work during the day at the time. I was actually teaching school at the time, and her telling the social workers her tale of woe of how abused she was, and which they believed implicitly. And unfortunately, they were also noticing that she couldn't maintain the household. She couldn't keep the children clean. She couldn't keep up the wash. And so they took the children away from both of us. And then
based on what? And how did her appearance and how did her parenting influence CYFD to take the children away from you?
Well, they believed everything that she said about me, that I was drunk, I was violent, I was abusive, and they never questioned whether that was true or not.
What proof did they have?
Just her word.
Allegations.
She's a very convincing liar.
But I don't get it. I mean, how can CYFD do this without any concrete evidence?
Plus, the people that are involved in that have a disposition to believe that maybe they were abused themselves, and that's why they chose this line of work.
I get it. Maybe they're more interested in child pornography while they're watching child pornography while they're at work. Is that a possibility?
That could be. I think
there's an assistant director that admitted to having files on his computer about, and this is CYFD, and these are people that are supposed to be protecting children. So,
well, some of the people.
So we've got perpetrators that are actually trying to protect our children in New Mexico.
There are people who go into this line of work for the best of reasons to protect children, but there are other people who go into this line of work because of their experiences, and they're projecting their experiences onto people like myself. My father beat me, sexually abused me. You must be the same kind of character. And these are damaged people, I feel, in positions of authority with no oversight.
Do you believe that CYFD in New Mexico is the same as CYFD in every other state? Or are you under the impression or under the opinion, according to CYFD figures from around the United States, that CYFD in New Mexico, let's get it clear, removes children 18 times more than every other state?
Really? Well, I was not aware of that statistic, but I think the problem is nationwide. It's endemic to the profession.
The national per capita average.
It's a calling for some people who have an agenda.
Do you think the state makes any money off of removing children from the home?
Well, they've certainly made a lot of money off my case. This has been in litigation now for 9 years or 7 years.